Gonna wait a couple minutes to let some people get in, and then we're gonna get started. We'll be in John chapter 7 today. We'll go through this whole chapter. Like I said, we'll wait just a couple minutes, get some people in here, and then we'll get started. Hope everyone's doing well. Really miss y'all guys. Wish I could be around y'all. But you know how quarantine goes. All right. Well, we're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will come in as we're going. But like I said, we'll be in John chapter 7 today. Now, the thing about this chapter, just to kind of give you a little heads up of where we're going with this, this really kind of displays some more characteristics of Jesus, and Jesus kind of explaining himself and kind of letting people know who he is, and trying to help the people understand better who he is. So that's kind of where we're going. We're going to learn a little more about Jesus and who he is and why he does the things he's doing. This also takes place during a festival, and so it's kind of over a period of 3 days. So we're not just looking at like one specific day, but we're looking actually at 3 separate days, and I'll break those down here in a second, and you can understand what those 3 days are. So like I said, we're just going to read chapter 7. We're going to talk about it, talk about a little more about who Jesus is, and then these 3 days of these festivals. And it's going to help us understand a little more about who Jesus is. So we're going to start with verses 1 through 9 to start this first little section, and then we'll keep going. So let's read 1 through 9. After this, Jesus traveled to Galilee, since he did not want to go travel to Judea because the Jews were trying to kill him. The Jewish festival of Shelters was near. So his brother said to him, "Leave here and go to Judea, so you can disciple and can see the works that you are doing, so they can see the works you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he seeks public recognition. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Fear not, even his brothers believe in him." Jesus told them, "My time is not yet arrived, but your time is still at hand. And the world cannot hate you, but it does hate me because I testify about it, that its works are evil. Go up to the festival yourselves. I am not going up to the festival because my time has not yet fully come." After he said these things, he stayed in Galilee. Okay, so right here at the beginning, we just see this really quick kind of intro to this chapter about this festival. Just a little bit, it says what festival it is, and then it says that Jesus doesn't want to go and is not going to go to this festival, but he wants to send the disciples to go do work for him at this festival. Okay, so we see him. They tell him, "Hey, the disciples are talking to Jesus, and they're saying, 'Hey, let's go to this festival so we can continue the work that you are doing, and people can see you and they can know more about you.'" But Jesus kind of tells them, "Hey, let's hold off, and I'm not going to go because he knows the coming day of his death is drawing closer and closer and closer." And so he's like, "I'm not going to go because it's actually not my time yet. The time of my death has not yet come. And so for me to go put myself in danger of being arrested now, I'm not going to do that because it's not my time." And I thought it was pretty interesting when I was reading through my commentary to kind of help guide myself through this a little more. It even says here, Jesus talks about going up. And by that, this can mean a few different things. Going up to the festival, like as in like going somewhere, but also going up to heaven. He's saying that it is not my time to go up. So it's a little play on words there, meaning it's not my time to go to the festival, but it's also not my time to go to heaven. And so it's not my time to go up. And so he says this to the disciples that, hey, I'm not going to go to this festival, but y'all go on and go lay the groundwork for me while I stay here in Galilee. And then at the end, it says that the disciples left and he stayed in Galilee. Okay, so Jesus himself even says, like I said, my Bible has the red letters. So the red letters are Jesus talking. And so we believe these are the words of Jesus, or very close to the words of Jesus. And so right there, verses 6 through 8 are red letters, and it's Jesus talking. And it even says there in verse 7, the world cannot hate you, meaning the disciples. The world cannot hate you. They actually hate me because of the things that I testify, and the things that I say, and the things that I claim. The world hates me. They don't hate you. So you go ahead and go. They're not going to necessarily arrest you because you're not making these claims about yourself. I'm making these claims about myself. So I'm not going to go because it's not my time, like we said. So the world hates Jesus, or they hate the claims that Jesus is making. Okay. So that's right there. That's that beginning of this chapter. We see Jesus say, you know what? I'm not going to go to this festival because it's not my time. It's not my time to go up. Like I said, meaning it's either not my time to go up to Jerusalem, but it's also not or Judea, but it's also not my time to go to heaven. So it's not my time to be arrested. It's not my time to die. And so I'm not going to go with you. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and read this kind of next section of this chapter. Now, I'm going to pull up my commentary here. It's going to help me and guide me a little bit through this, because there are some points that I saw that were really awesome that I wanted to be able to kind of give you. And also, I thought it was good knowledge to kind of add on to this. Okay. Now, prior to this next section we're going to read, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about the beginning. This is actually Jesus' last time to go, or this would be his last chance to go to Judea before his death. Okay, so the idea is that this festival takes place in September, October timeframe, and we see though that the next spring, this next April timeframe is when Jesus is going to die. And so he's like, hey, it's not my time, so I'm not going to go. But we actually see, when we're going to keep reading, Jesus actually does end up going. But we're going to talk about that here in a second. So real quick, like I said, this next section we're going to read is actually broken up into 3 different days. So you have day 1, day 2, day 3. You have the beginning of the festival. You have the middle section of the festival. Then you have the last day of the festival. And each day is important. Each day marks a different way that Jesus is either going to show himself, or he's going to teach people about himself. Okay. Or in the beginning, not show himself, which we'll talk about that here in just a second. This chapter also describes the reaction of the people to Jesus. It kind of shows the reactions of the things that he's saying, or the things that he may do, or things like that. Mostly it's what he says here in this time frame. So it shows the reaction of the people. And in the end, they're going to be people who either want to arrest him or have him dead. But we're going to see some really cool things that happen in this chapter about being arrested / being killed or whatever. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to start here with what we're going to call the beginning section, or the beginning of the festival. So we're going to read, like I said, the next section here is verses 10 through 24. That's the next major section of this chapter. So let's go ahead and read that, and then we'll talk about it. All right. Verse 10. After his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but secretly. The Jews were looking for him at the festival, saying, "Where is he?" And there was a lot of murmuring about him among the crowds. Some were saying, "He is a good man." Others were saying, no, on the contrary, he is deceiving the people. Still, nobody was talking publicly about him for the fear of the Jews. When the festival was already half over, Jesus went up to the temple and began teaching. Then the Jews were amazed and said, "How is this man so learned, since he has not been trained?" Jesus answered them, "My teaching isn't mine, but from the one who sent me. From anyone who wants to do his will, he will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own. The others who speak on their own seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Didn't Moses give you the law? Yet no one keeps the law. Why are you trying to kill me?" "You have a demon," the crowd responded, "who is trying to kill you. I performed one work, and you are all amazed," Jesus answered. "This is why Moses gave you circumcision. Not that it comes from Moses, but that it comes from the Father. Are you circumcised a man? And you circumcise a man on, wrong page, on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so the law of Moses won't be broken. Are you angry at me because I made a man enter well on the Sabbath? Stop judging according to the outward appearance. Rather, judge according to the righteous judgment." All right. So this is actually this section of this passage is actually going into technically day 2. So the first section was day 1 of the past, or this like kind of festival going on. And we see right at the beginning of this next section, it's still technically day 1, but then we get into day 2, which is really the kind of chunk that is going to be the part where Jesus is really explaining himself and trying to teach the people more about him. Okay, so we're going to see here that in this section, day 1, day 2, day 3, they all have specific points that Jesus is going to make on these days. Okay, so day 1, or the ending of day 1, we see that Jesus actually goes to this festival, right? But it's interesting the way that Jesus does it. He doesn't just show up and be like, "Hey, I'm Jesus," right? We see that he actually goes in secret. He doesn't go proclaiming about who he is. He kind of goes incognito and just like kind of wants to not be seen, because he knows that if he is just open about who he is and like, "Hey, I am Jesus, this and that," there's a chance he's going to be arrested and or killed there in the moment. And so Jesus is like, "You know what? I'm going to go in secret." And we see that Jesus is walking around and hearing the murmuring of the people around him talking about him, talking about Jesus, right? We see people saying, "Hey, he's a good man. Like this dude, Jesus, like he's good." Then other people were saying like, "No, like he's actually deceiving people." So you have the two sides. There are people who believe in Jesus and people who don't believe in what Jesus is doing, right? There's these two contrasting parts. But something that's also interesting about it, though, is that the people aren't openly talking about it. It's not like everyone's just going around talking about it. Everyone's, having these conversations. No, like they're having side conversations and quiet conversations about it. Like it says, murmuring, meaning like it's going to be quiet. It's not going to be pretty open, because they are afraid that the Jews are going to come persecute them because they're talking about Jesus. And that's a real threat at this time frame. And so we see here that this is day 1. Jesus does show up, but he's very incognito. And they're talking about, we hear the people talking about Jesus, murmuring about Jesus, and saying he's good or no, he's bad, whatever it may be. Okay. So then day 2 comes. Okay. Now day 2 is the day that Jesus he shows himself. Okay. He starts talking to the people here in day 2. He shows up actually to the synagogue or to the temple, and actually starts talking about who he is. Okay, so this is kind of interesting, because remember in the beginning, Jesus says, "I don't want to go because the fear of being seen and the fear of being caught." But Jesus then comes out and says, "You know what? I don't care. I'm actually going to start talking about myself." The reason why I believe Jesus actually comes out and starts having these conversations and talking about himself is because the people don't understand who Jesus is. The people don't understand why he's there. They don't understand why he's doing the things he's doing. And so Jesus comes out and basically says, "Hey, you need to know things about me. You need to understand why I'm here. You need to understand these things." And so Jesus is like, "You know what? It's okay. God's going to be in control. God knows the actual timing of my death." And Jesus technically does too. But so he's like, "You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and start talking." So we see here in this section, which I don't think we got to all three of them, because I think that the third one is in the next section. But there are three questions that are posed to Jesus, that are asked to him. So the three questions that are asked about Jesus is, where did Jesus go to school? Like, where did he learn? Where did he get his education? Things like that. The second question is, where is he from? Okay. And then the third question is going to be, where is this man going? Okay. So these are the three questions that the people are trying to figure out about Jesus. Okay. So we see there in this section for sure, where it kind of starts there in verse 14, 15, and through 16 and stuff like that, where they're asking essentially, well, where did Jesus learn the things he knows? Okay. For a short answer, his answer is heaven. I got my knowledge from God, and nowhere else. And it's pretty interesting that Jesus says this, because in this time frame, for you to know the kinds of things that Jesus already knows, it takes years of schooling, from a kid through like teenager, like kind of how we go to school here, from being a kid all the way through, our senior year of high school. Like, we're a kid, but then we become a teenager and we're still in school, right? Same kind of concept, but these kids are literally going just to learn scripture and just to learn these things of God, who will then one day become the priests and things like that. They start at very young ages. Now, if you remember, or if you know the story of Jesus, when he's a kid, they go into the city. He gets lost. His parents can't find him. Where is he? Well, he is at the temple teaching the rabbis. Like, he is there teaching the people who are supposed to be teaching everyone else. And he's roughly, 10 years old, maybe younger, maybe a little older, but he's really young, but already knows more than them. How is that possible if at that time frame, when he is that age, he shouldn't know that much at all? But how does he know it? Well, he gets it from God. And so that's Jesus' short answer to these people is, well, my knowledge comes from heaven, and that's how I know all the things that I know. Okay? And so that's where Jesus kind of like leaves that answer essentially. There, verses 16 through 19 is where he answers. And he talks about just essentially his knowledge comes from the heavens and comes from God. And the crowd actually replies and is kind of mad at him that that's his answer, right? They were expecting more of I learned from this specific prophet, or I learned from this specific schooling or whatever. And so they're like, well, you're a demon. That's kind of how they respond, or that you have a demon within you or something. There's no way you can know all these things without having some kind of schooling. And so Jesus' answer is, like I said, simple. Just, it came from heaven. It came from God. So that's the first question they ask him. And then this next question, and I think even the next two questions are going to come here in this next section, verses 25 through 36. So we're going to go ahead and read that, and then we'll talk about these next couple questions that are asked to Jesus. Like I said, the first question was, where did he go to school? Where is this man from? And then, where is this man going? These are the three questions asked to Jesus. So we'll read 25 through 36 real quick. Some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, "Isn't this man? Isn't this the man you are trying to kill? Yet look, he is speaking publicly, and they are saying nothing to him. Can it be true that the authorities know he is the Messiah? But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, nobody will know where he is from." And he was teaching them. He was teaching them the teaching in the temple. Jesus cried out, "You know me, and you know where I am from. Yet have ye, yet I have not come on my own, but the ones who sent me is true. The one who sent me is true. You don't know him. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." They tried seizing him, yet no one laid a hand on him because the hour had not yet come. However, many from the crowd believed him and said, "When the Messiah comes, he won't perform more signs than this man has done, will he?" The Pharisees heard the crowd murmuring these things about him, and so the chief priest and the Pharisees sent servants to arrest him. Then Jesus said, "I am only with you for a short time. Then I am going to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but you will not find me. And where I am, you cannot come." Then the Jews said to one another, the Jews said to one another, Where does he intend to go so we can find him? He does not intend to go to the Jewish people desperate. He does not intend to go to the Jewish people among the Greeks and teach the Greeks, does he? What will this remark he made? "You will look for me and you will not find me. Where I come from, you cannot come." Okay, so these are the next two questions that are posed and asked to Jesus. Okay, like I said, these next two questions are, where is this man from and where is this man going? Okay, so we see here something pretty interesting. Jesus does get up, like I say, and start talking to the people. We see that from the first question of asking where did he go to school, and he comes out and says, "Well, it's from heaven. I get my knowledge from God." And then this next question, well, where are you from? Now, in this time frame, the belief is that when the Messiah comes, they won't know where he is from. They won't know how he got there. It's kind of this idea that it's going to be a mystery, and he's just going to appear. It's just going to kind of pop up type thing, and Jesus is just going to be there, okay? Or this Messiah is just going to be there, okay? But Jesus kind of comes back and tells them where he actually is from. But the people are like, hey, we know where you are from, though. We know who your father is. We know what city and what town like you come from. Like, if you're the Messiah, how do we know these things about you? And Jesus is going to come back and say, well, you're mistaken. This idea of the Messiah that you have, that he'll just appear and come out of nowhere, is actually wrong. That's not how the Messiah is going to come. That's just what you've been taught, and what you've been taught is it's wrong. And so people are going to kind of get mad at him for that. That him kind of saying, well, what you think is actually wrong. But yet again, Jesus' answer here is pretty short, in the sense he says, "I'm from heaven." So not only did he say his knowledge comes from heaven, but now he's saying, I also come from heaven, right? There in verse 28, "You know me and you know where I come from, yet I have not come on my own. But the one who sent me is true, and you don't know him. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." So he's saying, you may know the place I am from, and the town that like I come from as a human, but I truly come from God, and I know him. You don't know him, but I do know him, and I come from him. And so it's kind of ironic here that in Jesus is also kind of being, he's kind of, I don't know how to explain it. He's kind of being sassy essentially, where they're like, well, where were you taught from? Well, I was taught from heaven. Okay, where are you from? I'm from heaven. And so he's just kind of giving these answers. And so the people are kind of getting mad. Like I said, they're in 30. It says that they tried to arrest him. The people were like, okay, we're not going to accept that answer. So let's try to arrest him. And if we see here, it says that the crowd tried to arrest him, but they couldn't lay a hand on him because his time had not yet come. What does that mean? Like, his time has not yet come. Well, like I said at the beginning, his time of death, his time of arrest, those kind of things had not yet come. And so for them trying to arrest him at this time frame essentially wasn't going to happen, because Jesus' time to be arrested hadn't come yet. And so they tried to arrest him and it didn't happen. And that's kind of interesting. I try to picture and imagine what that looks like. And I'm assuming it's just kind of like they tried to get him, but they just couldn't reach out to him or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how that looked, but the idea that they couldn't arrest him because his time hadn't come to be arrested. Okay, so the next question, like I said, asked is, well, where's this man going? And yet again, Jesus gives a pretty simple answer, and he says, heaven. I'm going to heaven. And so the three answers Jesus has given these people to every question: where were you educated? Heaven. Where are you from? Heaven. Where are you going? Heaven. And so the people are probably getting a little bit frustrated, but also they're learning more about him. Jesus is explaining himself and telling these people, like, hey, I am God, essentially. I am from God. He sent me, he teaches me, and I will go back to him. So he gives his answer of heaven yet again. And it even says there, in verse 33, I'm only with you for a short time, then I'm going to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but you will not find me. And where I am, you cannot come. Meaning, I will only be here for a very short amount of time. We know Jesus' ministry only lasted about 3 years. So he's like, I'm here for a short time, and then at some point, I'm going to go back to the Father. And where I am, meaning heaven with God, you can't just walk to, right? You can't just come to it, right? You're going to look for me. You're not going to find me. Like, physically, you will not find me because I will not be on earth. And you can't just, like I said, walk to heaven, right? But the cool thing about the whole concept, though, in the end, we know that when we accept Christ and we're there, we will be able to go to heaven with God and with Jesus. But it will not be a physical walk to heaven. So that's what he's saying here. I'm going to go back to heaven. You're going to look for me. You're not going to be able to find me. You're not going to be able to just walk on over to the next town and find me, right? It's not that kind of concept. All right. So let's wrap up this section, or this chapter. I'm actually going to go ahead and just read verses 37 through 52 so we can wrap this up. I don't want to go too much longer because I know we're about to hit 30 minutes. And I apologize on that. But this is just some good stuff. So let me read it real quick. We'll wrap it up and then we'll be done for the day. So 37 through 52. On the last day, in the most important day of the festival, Jesus stood up and cried out, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. The one who believes in me, as the scripture says, will have streams of living water flowing from deep within him." He said this about the Spirit. Those who believed in Jesus were going to receive the Spirit, for the Spirit had not yet been given because Jesus had not yet been glorified. When some of the crowd heard the words from, they said, "This truly is the prophet." Others said, "This is the Messiah." But some said, "Surely the Messiah hasn't come from Galilee, does he? Does the scripture say that the Messiah comes from David's offspring and from the town of Bethlehem, where David lived?" So the crowd was divided because of him. Some of them wanted to seize him, but no one had laid a hand on him. Then the servant came to the chief priests and the Pharisees who had asked them, "Why didn't you bring him?" The servants answered, "No man ever spoke like this." Then the Pharisees responded to them, "Are you fooled too? Have any of the rulers or Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd, um, which does not know the law, is accused." Nicodemus, the one who came to him previously, and the one who was one of them, said to them, "Our law doesn't judge man before the hearers. From him knows what he's doing. Does he? You are from Galilee too, are you? Aren't you from Galilee too?" They replied, "Investigate, and you will see that no prophet arises from Galilee." Okay, so a couple things real quick. We're going to point out about this last little section will be done. Okay, this first little section there, 37 through 39, Jesus makes this claim about the living water. Okay, now it is found that on the last day of this festival that they are that Jesus is at. Every day there is this kind of like washing with water, or this kind of idea that they bring water in from the stream and kind of pray as like we need the rain type thing. So it's kind of this tradition of, hey, we pray, we get the rain, essentially. And so Jesus kind of stands up and testifies essentially against this act of, this water. He's like, here's the deal though, that if you come to me, you will never thirst again. And if you believe in me, you will flow with living water. And so Jesus is kind of coming and saying like, hey, this idea of like prayer for rain and things like that, whatever, here's the deal. I can give you the living water and you'll never thirst again. Okay. Now, the thought of this is not like a physical thirst. You will never like be parched or whatever. That's not what he's talking about. He's saying your spiritual life will never be dry if you come through me. Like if you flow through me, your spiritual life will never be dry. And so Jesus kind of, like I said, stands up and kind of wipes away this idea of this festival thought and saying, I am the living water, which I think is pretty important. It even says there, the last and most important day of the festival. This is the day that they have this big prayer and this bringing in of water and things like that. But then Jesus comes back and says, "But I'm the living water, so don't even worry about this water." Now, the very end of this passage, we see that the guys who were sent, the servants who were sent to arrest Jesus, comes back to the Pharisees, and they don't have Jesus in hand. They couldn't arrest him, right? And even says, "Why didn't you bring him?" The servants answered, "No man ever spoke like this." Now, when I hear that, I think maybe they just didn't hear Jesus. Maybe they didn't see Jesus, or if they saw him, they didn't hear the words he was saying because it wasn't his time to be arrested. And so this is kind of like this trickery essentially in their minds, where they didn't even understand Jesus or didn't see Jesus or didn't hear him or whatever it may be. So they weren't able to bring him back. Now, it also talks about this idea of, where's Jesus from? And they're like, well, Jesus can't come from Galilee, right? There's no way he can come from Galilee because, he's going to come out of nowhere or whatever. But remember, Jesus comes back and says earlier that I don't come from earth, I come from God, right? And I come from heaven. So I kind of want to wrap it up there. We're kind of going a little over time, so I want to go ahead and wrap up. The important things you need to pull from this chapter is a little more knowledge of Jesus. It's the fact that Jesus comes from heaven. He gets his knowledge from heaven, and he's going to go to heaven. And I think that's really important. Jesus is trying to explain himself to these people so they have a better understanding of who the Messiah is. Now, in the end, we see people say they do believe this and they believe in who Jesus is. And they're like, yeah, like I get it now. And there's other people that are like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can believe that. In the same way our culture is today. But for us to have a better understanding of who Jesus is, knowing that he is heaven, he comes from heaven, he gets his knowledge from heaven. That's really cool. Just good things for us to remember about Jesus. That the ultimate knowledge, the ultimate power in God came to us and lived on our earth. And one day will die for our sins. Like we said, the time in this time frame had not yet come, but the time will come. And we know that time has already come, right? But scripturally, in the way we're going, it hasn't come yet. And so Jesus is like, you know what? This is who I am. I want you to know more about me. Even though I said I wasn't going to come to this festival, I still showed up. I'm here, and now you know more about me. So that kind of wraps up this chapter, this knowledge, a little more knowledge about who Jesus is. So if you'll have any questions, feel free to type in the comments or whatever. I'll be here for maybe just another minute or so. But other than that, guys, we're done. Hope you'll have a wonderful day. Sorry for going a little bit over time, but there was a lot in this passage that I really wanted to talk about. So love you guys. Hope you have a fantastic day. I'll be here for questions if you have any. All right. I'm going to go ahead and peace out. Have a fantastic day. We'll see you next time.